The wedding hall was filled with an uneasy silence, the kind that precedes a storm. Light from the chandeliers flickered ominously, casting long shadows over the rows of guests. Bride in her ivory gown, Anna stood at the altar, her fingers trembling as she held the bouquet, her heart pounding against her chest. The man she thought she would marry, the man who had promised her everything, stood next to her. But there was something off in his eyes, something sharp and cold. Suddenly a voice, an innocent, unassuming voice, cut through the tension. "Mommy." A child's cry echoed across the room. Anna turned, her heart lurching as she saw the girl standing by the door, eyes wide, recognition flooding her expression. Her breath caught. The girl pointed directly at her fiancé. "That's my daddy," the child whispered, a certainty in her tone. Anna's face went pale, and the world tilted sideways. Her fiancé looked away, sweat beading at his temple. He hadn't prepared for this. The air felt suffocating. This was not how it was supposed to be. The reality of betrayal wrapped itself around her, squeezing her chest painfully. In the silence, the truth came crashing down. Anna's body felt like it had turned to stone as she stood frozen, her eyes locked on the child standing by the door, pointing at her fiancé. The world around her had gone completely still, as if everything had paused in that one excruciating moment. Her breath caught in her throat, and her chest tightened with a strange mix of dread and disbelief. How could this be happening? She searched the child's face, but all she saw was pure innocence, a child who didn't understand the weight of her words. Her fiancé's face twisted in something between guilt and fear, but he didn't say a word. The silence was deafening. Anna's legs shook beneath her, but she couldn't bring herself to move. The guests in the hall began to whisper, their hushed voices filling the air with disbelief. They were all witnessing a moment that should never have been. "Who is she?" Anna finally found her voice, but it was barely a whisper, a tremor in every syllable. Her fiancé swallowed hard, unable to meet her eyes. The truth hung in the air, suffocating them both. The words, "That's my daddy," echoed in Anna's ears, and her vision blurred. She could feel her heart pounding against her chest, every beat an excruciating reminder that everything she thought she knew was a lie. Her fiancé stood there, his face pale and his eyes full of panic, yet he didn't speak, didn't explain. He just stood frozen, as if the truth had tied his tongue. Anna's legs gave out beneath her, and she stumbled back. She felt as if the room had been pulled out from under her, the air thick with disbelief and pain. Her breath came in shallow gasps, as if she were drowning in the realization of the betrayal that was unfolding before her eyes. "Tell me it's not true," she whispered, her voice breaking. The child's innocent, unwavering gaze locked onto hers, the truth, undeniable. It was as if time stood still, and the world around her crumbled away, leaving nothing but the painful silence of betrayal. "I didn't." Her fiancé finally spoke, his voice strained, but Anna couldn't hear him anymore. Her mind was screaming, her thoughts racing, trying to make sense of the incomprehensible. "Stop," Anna said, her voice barely audible, but it rang through the hall. "Stop lying." She took a step back, her heart pounding so loudly in her chest she could barely hear her own voice. "I don't want to hear your excuses." The man in front of her opened his mouth again, but no words came out. His face crumbled with guilt and shame, and Anna saw that everything she had believed in had been a carefully constructed lie. "Who is she?" Anna's voice was sharp now, a knife slicing through the suffocating tension in the air. "Tell me the truth now." The silence that followed felt like an eternity. Her fiancé looked down, unable to answer. It was all the confirmation Anna needed. She turned away, her feet moving on their own. She couldn't stay here. Not with him. Not with this truth. As Anna turned away from her fiancé, her heart ached with a pain she couldn't explain. The room felt suffocating, and the floor beneath her seemed to tilt. The air was thick, pressing against her chest, and she didn't know how to breathe through it. She had spent her entire life trying to be the perfect woman, the perfect fiancée. But none of that mattered now. None of it had been real. She was just about to step out of the hall when she heard a voice. A voice that wasn't her fiancé's. "Anna," the voice called, firm yet somehow gentle. She didn't need to turn around to know who it was. The Alpha. Her heart skipped a beat. She hadn't seen him in years, hadn't expected him to show up now, especially not in the middle of this chaos. And yet, here he was, standing in the doorway, his presence commanding the room without a word. "Come with me," he said, his voice low and unwavering. "You don't have to face this alone." For a moment, Anna stood frozen, caught between the past and the unknown future, unsure of what to do, but for the first time, she felt a spark of something. Hope? Or maybe it was just the desperate need for escape. Anna stepped out of the church, her breath shaky as she walked down the stone steps. The evening air felt colder than it should have, biting at her skin, but it was nothing compared to the coldness settling deep in her heart. Her hands trembled as she fumbled with the hem of her wedding gown, a gown that now felt like a shroud, suffocating her. She stopped at the base of the steps, staring out into the distance, unable to focus on anything. What had just happened? How had her world unraveled in the span of a few seconds? She heard footsteps behind her but didn't turn. It was him. The Alpha. His presence was undeniable, and although Anna wasn't ready to confront him, she didn't move. "You don't have to be alone." His voice was calm, steady, like an anchor in a storm. Anna's chest tightened at the sound of it. She wanted to believe him, but how could she? After everything that had happened, could she trust anyone again? The Alpha stopped a few feet behind her, not intruding on her space, but close enough for Anna to feel the weight of his presence. The silence between them was heavy, laden with unspoken words. She had known him for years, yet never had he seemed this real, this intense. There was an undeniable pull, but Anna wasn't sure if it was born from the chaos she was feeling, or if it was something deeper, something true. "I've never wanted to hurt you, Anna," he said, his voice low, but the sincerity in it was palpable. She took a shallow breath, her fingers brushing the edge of her gown. She knew he wasn't talking about this moment. This wasn't the first time their paths had crossed. She thought about the years they had spent in each other's orbit, the moments they'd shared, the words left unsaid. Her mind raced with 1,000 thoughts, but she remained still. "Then why do I feel like everything in my life is falling apart?" Anna whispered, her voice barely above the wind. Anna's head fell forward slightly, her body sinking in on itself as if the weight of the moment was too much to carry. She didn't know what to say. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, to understand how everything had fallen apart. But there was something about the Alpha's presence that made her want to hold her breath, to let the storm of emotions inside her swirl without unleashing them. "You're afraid," he said, stepping closer, his voice firm but gentle. Anna stiffened, surprised by his words. Was she? She had never seen herself that way before, but standing here, alone, in the aftermath of her broken trust, she realized how little she knew of herself. She had spent so many years being the perfect daughter, the perfect fiancée, silent, obedient, and always following the path laid out for her. But what was she now? Who was she now? "I don't know what I'm supposed to feel," she whispered, her words raw, vulnerable. "I don't have the answers you need," the Alpha said quietly, his voice like a grounding force. "But I know you're not alone in this. You're stronger than you think, Anna." His words felt like an invitation, but Anna didn't know what to do with them. Could she even trust him? Could she trust anyone? Her life had been a lie, and the person who had once been the most important part of it had just shattered everything. She couldn't afford to believe in anyone again, not even him. "I don't want your pity," Anna said, her voice shaking with the mix of anger and pain. "I just want to understand what happened." The Alpha was quiet for a moment, letting her words sink in before he replied. "You'll understand, but not now. Right now, you need time, and I'll give you all the time you need." He moved closer, but he didn't touch her, keeping his distance, letting her breathe. Anna was torn between wanting to run and wanting to stay, but all she could do was stand there. Anna finally lifted her gaze, meeting the Alpha's eyes. There was something unwavering in them, something she didn't fully understand, but it made her question everything she had ever known about herself. The tears that had been threatening to fall now began to spill over, tracing down her cheeks. She couldn't stop them, couldn't hold back the flood of emotions anymore. Everything she had been so sure of, her life, her love, her future, was slipping through her fingers. The Alpha's gaze softened, and he stepped forward, his presence as comforting as it was unsettling. "I'm not here to fix you, Anna. I'm here to walk with you, if you'll let me." The words were simple, yet they settled deep into her chest. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, she felt a flicker of hope, like a tiny ember refusing to be extinguished. "I don't know if I can trust anyone," she admitted, the vulnerability in her voice undeniable. "But I don't want to be alone." Anna's feet moved of their own accord, the city streets unfamiliar beneath her. The darkened sky seemed to press down on her, making the air feel even colder. Her heart was a tumult of emotions, betrayal, disbelief, anger, but above all, an ache that gnawed at her from within. She couldn't think straight. She didn't know where to go, or what to do. The wedding dress felt foreign, like a costume she had been forced into. As she walked, the distant sound of footsteps behind her grew closer. Her instinct told her it was him, the Alpha. She couldn't bring herself to look back, but she could feel the weight of his presence, steady and unwavering, like a constant she couldn't escape. "Anna," his voice was calm, but there was an edge of urgency to it. She kept walking, refusing to acknowledge him, her thoughts swirling. But he didn't stop. He matched her pace, stepping closer until she could feel his presence beside her. "You can't outrun this, Anna," he said softly, his voice filled with quiet resolve. Anna stopped abruptly, turning to face the Alpha, her chest heaving with emotion. Her eyes filled with the pain of everything that had just unfolded, locked onto his. "You think you can just walk beside me, like you've always been here? Like you know what this feels like?" Her words were sharp, cutting through the silence. The Alpha met her gaze without flinching, his expression unreadable. There was no anger in his eyes, no judgment, just understanding. "I never said I know what it feels like," he replied, his voice calm yet firm. "But I've seen enough to know that you don't have to do this alone." Anna's eyes softened, the edges of her anger crumbling beneath the weight of her own vulnerability. She was so tired, tired of being strong, tired of pretending everything was okay. "And what would you have me do?" Anna asked quietly, the rawness of her emotions surfacing. "How am I supposed to move on from this?" The Alpha didn't answer right away, instead taking a step closer to her. "I can't tell you what to do, Anna, but I can tell you that running from this won't help. You need to face it. You need to confront the truth of what happened." His words were like a punch to the gut, and Anna felt herself stumble, mentally and emotionally. She wanted to fight back, to argue that she couldn't do it, that everything had been ripped away too quickly, but she knew he was right. "I've always done what others wanted," Anna said, her voice quiet, almost as if she were speaking to herself. "I've always been the good girl, the one who obeyed, the one who kept everything together. But now I don't know who I am anymore." The Alpha's voice softened. "Who you are is not defined by what others think, Anna. It's defined by how you choose to move forward. You don't have to do this alone." Anna closed her eyes, trying to block out the rush of emotions threatening to overwhelm her. "I don't know how." Anna's shoulders were heavy with the weight of her grief, the reality of everything crashing down on her all at once. She wanted to break down, to give in to the tears that were threatening to fall, but she held them back, unwilling to show weakness. "I don't know if I can go back," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I don't think I can look at him again. I don't think I can forgive him." The Alpha's expression softened even further, his gaze never leaving hers. "Forgiveness isn't for him, Anna. It's for you. You can't carry this anger with you forever." Anna shook her head, her emotions finally spilling over. "I don't know how to forgive. How do I let go of this? How do I move past the lie?" The Alpha stepped closer, his voice gentle but firm. "It's not about forgetting the truth, Anna. It's about freeing yourself from it." The words sank into her chest like a heavy stone, and for the first time, she realized that she had been carrying so much for so long. Fear, anger, shame. Maybe it was time to let go. Anna wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, her chest still heavy, but a small part of her starting to breathe again. The Alpha stood there waiting, not pressing her, just offering his silent support. "I've spent my entire life trying to please everyone," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "And now, everything's falling apart." The Alpha didn't answer immediately, his gaze unwavering. Finally he spoke, his voice quiet but full of conviction. "Everything may be falling apart, Anna, but sometimes things have to break before they can be rebuilt." Anna looked at him, her eyes searching his face. There was a quiet strength in him, an unspoken promise. She didn't know if she could trust him fully yet, but in this moment she didn't feel completely alone. "I don't know what comes next," she said softly, "but I think I'm ready to face it." The Alpha nodded, his face softening. "I'll be here, whenever you're ready." The weeks following Anna's encounter with the Alpha were a blur. She had retreated to the quiet of her apartment, away from the prying eyes of the world, trying to make sense of everything. Every night, the same thoughts raced through her mind, questions she had never considered before. What was she supposed to do now? How could she ever trust again? She hadn't heard from her fiancé, but she hadn't expected to. He had disappeared, leaving behind only a broken engagement and the devastation of his betrayal. The only constant in her life now was the Alpha. Steady, unyielding, offering a kind of peace that Anna didn't know she needed. One evening, after a long day of reflection, she was sitting at her kitchen table when the doorbell rang. Her heart skipped a beat. Who could it be? Her mind flashed to the worst possibilities. Her fiancé coming to apologize, or worse, someone bringing bad news. When she opened the door, the last person she expected to see stood before her. The little girl from the church. And beside her was her fiancé. Anna felt her breath catch as she stared at her fiancé, standing there with the little girl beside him. The confusion, anger, and betrayal surged back within her in an overwhelming wave. She took a step back, feeling as if the ground had been pulled out from under her once again. You brought her here." Anna's voice trembled, her hands curling into fists at her sides. Her fiancé sighed, his face filled with regret and shame. "Anna, please, let me explain. This isn't what it seems." Anna shook her head, her chest tight with emotion. "What is it then? What could possibly explain this?" The little girl stood silently, her small hand holding her father's, unaware of the storm unfolding around her. The fiancé's voice was barely audible. "I never wanted you to find out this way, but it's time for the truth." Anna stared at him, disbelief written all over her face. "The truth? I have a daughter, Anna, and I've been hiding it from you." Anna's mind was racing, her thoughts spinning wildly. She felt betrayed once more, but this time, the betrayal was deeper, more personal. Her fiancé had kept something so significant from her for so long. And now, here she was, confronted with a child who, despite her innocence, represented the lies Anna had been living. "You have a daughter," Anna repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. Her heart ached with a sorrow she hadn't expected. "Why didn't you tell me?" The fiancé looked down, unable to meet her eyes. "I was afraid you'd leave me." Anna's anger flared again. "You lied to me. For months I thought I knew you. But all this time you've been hiding the most important part of your life from me." The little girl tugged on her father's sleeve, her soft voice breaking through the tension. "Mommy, are you mad?" Anna's heart shattered at the word, "Mommy." She felt herself breaking all over again. The truth was unbearable. Anna's knees buckled slightly as she stepped back, her emotions crashing over her like a tidal wave. She had trusted him, loved him, and yet he had kept her in the dark, living a life full of secrets and lies. "I don't know what to say to you," Anna whispered, her voice strained. "I don't know how to process this." The fiancé took a step forward, but Anna held up her hand, stopping him. No, don't say anything more, you've already said enough. The little girl looked up at Anna with confusion in her eyes, clearly not understanding the weight of the situation. But Anna couldn't look at her. She couldn't bear the reminder of the truth she didn't want to accept. I'm sorry, Anna. I truly am, her fiancé said, his voice thick with emotion. But I was afraid of losing you. Anna shook her head, tears filling her eyes. I don't know if I can forgive you for this. I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again. Her fiancé's face crumpled in despair, but Anna didn't care anymore. She couldn't. The silence that followed felt suffocating. Anna stood there, her heart racing, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. She couldn't process all of this at once. I need space, she whispered, almost to herself. I need time to think. Her fiancé nodded, his face a mixture of relief and regret. He stepped back, but the little girl didn't move. Instead, she looked up at Anna, her innocent eyes filled with questions. I'm sorry, Mommy, she said softly. The word hit Anna like a physical blow. She stumbled back, unable to breathe. She had never imagined her life would look like this, betrayed by the man she loved, and now confronted with the reality of a child who would never be hers. The fiancé looked at her with pain in his eyes, but Anna couldn't deal with any of it. She turned away, retreating into the safety of her apartment, the door closing softly behind her. The truth had changed everything. The days following the confrontation with her fiancé and the little girl were a blur. Anna had retreated further into herself, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. She was numb, her heart bruised and battered from the endless emotional storm. She had no answers, only questions that circled in her mind, relentless and unyielding. It was late in the evening when the Alpha showed up at her apartment again. She hadn't expected him, hadn't even wanted to see him, but somehow, his presence didn't feel like an intrusion. He knocked softly on the door, and when Anna opened it, he didn't speak at first. Anna, he said after a long moment. You've been avoiding this, and I get it. But you can't keep hiding forever. She looked at him, exhausted, her eyes filled with a sorrow that she hadn't allowed anyone to see before. I don't know how to move on, she whispered. I don't know how to let go of the past. Anna stepped aside, allowing the Alpha into her apartment, the faint scent of rain from outside clinging to him. He didn't say anything as he entered, just gave her a moment to breathe. She didn't know how to express the jumble of emotions inside her. She had been a woman of structure, of routine, and now everything was chaos. The Alpha stood by the window, staring out at the city skyline, his hands in his pockets. You've spent so much time being strong, Anna, he said, his voice low, but there was a softness to it. You've always put others first. But when does it become enough? When do you start living for yourself? Her eyes welled up with tears at his words. She had spent so long trying to be everything to everyone. Her fiancé, her family, society, and now she was lost. I don't know who I am anymore, Anna said, her voice cracking. I don't know what's left of me. The Alpha turned from the window, his gaze locking onto Anna with an intensity that she couldn't ignore. He took a few steps forward, each one deliberate, until he was standing only a few feet away from her. Anna, he said, his voice firm yet gentle. You are not defined by the people who have failed you. You are not a reflection of their lies or their mistakes. Anna's breath caught in her throat, the weight of his words sinking into her chest. The pain, the betrayal, the heartbreak, it had all been part of her journey, but it didn't have to be the whole story. She was more than the sum of her past. You're right, Anna whispered, her voice barely audible. But how do I move forward from here? The Alpha's expression softened, his eyes filled with something more than just empathy. Something that felt like understanding. You take it one step at a time. You choose what you want for yourself. And I'll be here, every step of the way. Anna stood there staring at the Alpha, and for the first time in weeks, she felt something inside her stir. A spark of hope, perhaps, or the smallest glimmer of peace. She took a deep breath, as if releasing a tension that had been building in her chest for far too long. "You've been right all along," she said, her voice stronger now. "I've been running from myself, from what's inside me." The Alpha smiled slightly, but it wasn't a smile of triumph. It was a smile of recognition, as if he had seen this change in her long before she had. "You don't have to be perfect, Anna. You just need to be you. And that's enough." Tears welled up in her eyes again, but this time, they were rent-born of pain. They were the release of everything she had kept buried for so long. She hadn't realized how much weight she had been carrying until this moment. "I don't know what the future holds," Anna said softly, "but I think I'm ready to find out." Anna walked toward the door, her steps light but determined. She paused for a moment, her hand resting on the doorknob. The Alpha stood in the background, watching her. "You're not alone, Anna," he said, his voice steady and filled with unwavering certainty. She turned to face him, her heart pounding in her chest. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she could breathe, like there was a future waiting for her. She didn't know what that future would look like, but she knew it was hers to shape. "I'm not afraid anymore," she whispered, her voice steady, as if she had finally found the courage she had been searching for. The Alpha smiled, a knowing look in his eyes. "Then let's take that first step together." Anna opened the door, stepping into the unknown, but with a new sense of strength and a quiet hope that she hadn't allowed herself to feel before. The days after Anna's decision to move forward were filled with small victories and quiet realizations. She had returned to her apartment, slowly reclaiming her space, her life. The silence was different now, less oppressive, more comforting. She had begun to let go of the anger that had consumed her for so long, and for the first time in years she was doing things for herself. She spent time reconnecting with friends, some she hadn't spoken to in years. They had been there for her, even when she had pushed them away. It wasn't easy, but each step felt like a piece of the puzzle falling into place. One afternoon, she stood in front of her mirror, looking at herself. Her eyes were different, softer now, but there was strength behind them. "I'm not perfect," she whispered to her reflection, "but I'm enough." Her phone buzzed in her hand, and when she saw the name on the screen, her heart skipped. It was the Alpha. With a deep breath, she answered. Anna sat on the couch, the phone pressed to her ear. The Alpha's voice was warm, steady, and familiar, a comforting constant. "I'm glad you picked up," he said softly. "I've been thinking about you." Her heart fluttered at the sincerity in his tone. She hadn't expected this conversation, not now, not after everything that had happened. But she realized she wasn't afraid anymore. "I've been thinking about you too," she admitted. "And I've been thinking about everything I've been running from." There was a brief silence on the other end. Then the Alpha's voice came through, gentle but firm. "I know it's not easy, but you're not alone in this, Anna. You don't have to carry it all by yourself." She swallowed hard, her emotions threatening to rise to the surface. "I think I'm ready to stop running." The conversation with the Alpha continued, and as the words flowed between them, Anna realized something important. She wasn't the same person she had been when she first met him. She had changed. She had grown. "I'm not sure where I'm going," she said, her voice quiet but resolute. "But I know I'm not the woman who was hiding from everything anymore. I'm learning to face it." The Alpha's voice was filled with admiration. "That's all I've ever wanted for you, Anna. For you to stop being afraid." She closed her eyes, leaning back on the couch, the weight of his words settling over her like a comforting blanket. "I think I'm starting to believe that I can face anything now." "You can," the Alpha said. "And I'll be here to help you through it." Anna felt a warmth in her chest at his words. It was the kind of reassurance she needed, not because she couldn't stand on her own, but because she wasn't alone anymore. The days passed, and Anna found herself more present than ever before. She had slowly begun the process of reclaiming the pieces of herself she had lost along the way. Her work, her friendships, her passions, everything felt more real now. Even the smallest moments held meaning. One morning, she decided to take a walk in the park, something she hadn't done in ages. As she strolled along the tree-lined path, The autumn leaves fluttering in the breeze, she felt something stir inside her, a feeling of contentment. It wasn't the happiness she had once imagined, but it was enough. As she walked, her phone buzzed. It was a text from the Alpha. "How are you today?" A smile spread across Anna's face, a quiet, genuine smile that reached her eyes. She typed back, "I'm doing well, learning to appreciate the little things." She paused before sending the message, feeling a quiet sense of peace in her heart. The future was still unknown, but for the first time, she was excited for it. Anna sat at the kitchen table, her coffee cup resting in her hands, the early morning light streaming through the window. It had been a long journey, but she had made it here. She was no longer the woman hiding behind a mask of perfection. She was free, at least in a way she hadn't known before. She thought about the Alpha, about their conversations, about the way he had always been there, not pushing her, but offering his steady presence. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for him, but also a recognition that she no longer needed anyone to complete her. She was whole on her own. Her phone buzzed again, and when she saw the message, she couldn't help but smile. It was from the Alpha, a simple text that read, "Take care of yourself, Anna. You deserve it." Tears welled up in her eyes, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming sense of peace she felt. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was living. The city felt different now. The air was crisp, and the streets seemed brighter, as if Anna's perspective had shifted in ways she hadn't anticipated. She walked through the crowd of people, no longer feeling small or invisible, but part of something larger. She had spent so long waiting for permission to live, to be seen, and now she knew she had the power to take that step herself. It had been a month since the last time she'd spoken with the Alpha. The distance between them had felt necessary. She needed space to breathe, to heal, but also to understand what role he played in her life. She wasn't ready to confront him again just yet, but she knew their paths would cross when the time was right. As she walked through the park, her phone buzzed again. It was a simple message from him, a message that made her pause. "You're doing great, Anna. Keep going." Her heart skipped a beat. She wasn't sure why, but she smiled. It felt like a blessing, a quiet reminder that she was on the right path. Anna returned to the apartment later that evening, the glow of the sunset fading behind her. She had spent the day reconnecting with herself, reflecting on everything that had brought her to this point. As she entered the quiet space of her home, she allowed herself to breathe deeply, feeling the calm settle in her chest. The phone buzzed once again, the familiar chime pulling her back from her thoughts. It was him again, the Alpha. This time, his message was different. "I'm proud of you, Anna. I know you don't need me to tell you that, but I think you should hear it anyway." Her heart swelled at the words. It wasn't about validation, it was about recognition. She had been through so much, but now she understood that her worth was not determined by the past, by others, or even by him. She was enough, on her own. With a deep breath, Anna typed back, "Thank you. I'm proud of me too." Weeks passed and Anna continued to flourish. She had started taking small risks, going out with friends, pursuing a new hobby, even considering a new career path. There was no grand plan, no rush. She was simply moving forward, day by day, step by step. One afternoon, she stood in front of an art gallery she had always wanted to visit. For the first time, she didn't hesitate. She walked inside, and as she stood in front of the first painting, she felt a sense of wonder. It wasn't about escaping or seeking approval. It was about reconnecting with the world, feeling alive in it. As she walked through the exhibits, she marveled at the beauty and the complexity of the world. It was all new to her, but it felt right. She was ready for it all. When she got home that evening, there was another message from the Alpha, this time with no words. Just a picture of the sunset, the same one they had watched together months ago. A silent acknowledgement of how far she had come. The Alpha's message lingered in Anna's mind as she sat by the window that night, gazing out at the city. She had made peace with everything, the past, the lies, the betrayal, and now She was building her future, one that was all her own. She had learned to trust herself, to listen to her own heart. That night, she finally realized something important. The Alpha had given her something she had been searching for her entire life. He had shown her how to heal, how to be whole again. But it was never about him, or anyone else. The strength she had needed was inside her the whole time. As the city lights twinkled below, she felt a sense of quiet satisfaction. She wasn't perfect, but she was enough. She was her own person, and that was all she ever needed to be. Tomorrow would be another day, and she was ready for it. As Anna stood in the park one early morning, the sunlight filtered through the trees, casting long shadows across the path. She breathed deeply, taking in the fresh air, the warmth of the sun on her skin. She was finally free, free of the burden of past mistakes, free of the weight of expectations. It was a new day, a fresh start, and Anna knew she was ready. She had learned to embrace the uncertainty of the future, to trust herself, and to let go of the need for approval from others. She didn't need the past to define her anymore. She was standing on the edge of something new, something beautiful. And with that, she stepped forward, her heart open to whatever would come next. The world was vast, and for the first time, Anna felt at peace with it. She smiled to herself, knowing she had earned this moment of freedom. "I'm finally home," she whispered, her heart full of hope.